Okay, Drumdums, this is it. It's time to conclude the Christopher Nolan trilogy with The Dark Knight Rises, where Batman faces off against his ultimate foe, Bane.
You think the darkness is your ally? I was molded by it, born of it.
The Dark Knight Rises stars Christian Bale, Tom Hardy, Morgan Freeman, Gary Oldman, and is directed by Christopher Nolan. Well guys, this is bittersweet. I am closing out the Dark Knight Trilogy. Had so much fun this month going through these, and this is probably the most daunting review set that I've ever done because these movies are just jam-packed with all kinds of stuff. So it's not like doing just a slasher movie where it's a quick killer hack and slash and a bunch of teenagers. No, these are convoluted plots. There's a lot going on. These are epics. So I'm glad to have stretched my review muscles and have delved into this beast of a trilogy. And it's only fitting that I'm doing The Dark Knight Rises because just a couple days ago, I had a back injury and I've been in severe back pain for the past couple days. And of course, back pain is a big plot point to The Dark Knight Rises, thanks to Bane. So it's only fitting that I'm doing this review in pain. I'm in pain right now. But like my first two reviews in the trilogy, I'm gonna have my guest, my good friend Bryan Lomax, come back for this third movie and tell you about the third overarching theme, which is pain. So take it away, Bryan.
And so we're down to the final film in the Dark Knight Trilogy, my favourite trilogy of all time, my favourite movies of all time, and Leah's asked me just to speak a little bit about the theme that I feel is predominant in the final film, The Dark Knight Rises, and that theme is pain. Batman really goes through the ringer in this film. He is moulded by pain. He was moulded by pain to begin with the tragedy of his parents. But in this film, we get a villain who really introduces him in a whole new way to the meaning of pain. He breaks his back, he tortures his city. And we see in this film how Batman reacts to that pain, how the pain makes him stronger once he learns to overcome it. In the last film, we saw how he dealt with chaos and how overcoming that in the way that he does by taking the blame, taking the fallout for things, he overcomes it. He becomes the hero. In this film, he literally has to pick himself back up again, reconstruct his body, and come and defeat the villain that kind of put him in that position. But even Bane himself is a villain born out of pain. We look at his tragic past and we see that in many ways he could very well much be Bruce. He could be Bruce Wayne. He could have gone the way that Bruce Wayne went, but he didn't. He went the opposite way. So we see these two characters, these two different characters, and how pain has affected their lives, how it has steered their lives. Ultimately, Nolan's trilogy, this film included, as part of that obviously, is a masterpiece, the whole lot. It deals with really weighty themes and it deals with them in a grounded level that shows us the ways in which humanity reacts to all manner of different dark situations, with Bruce Wayne, Batman, obviously being the ultimate hero to rise out of that. Fantastic trilogy, fantastic director. Lee, thank you for having me on once again. Over to you, mate.
Thank you so much, Bryan. Now let's get into The Dark Knight Rises. So after the epic movie The Dark Knight came out, how do you follow that up? It's a daunting task because this is a movie that is beloved by everybody. It was a cultural phenomenon. This was such a great film, not just comic book film, everything. So how do you come back and give such a compelling story, have a villain that can even touch what Heath Ledger did with the Joker? I had faith because Christopher Nolan was coming back for the third movie, so I knew this was going to be good. And when Bane was announced as the villain, I think everybody thought back to the Batman and Robin version of Bane, which is completely different than this version of Bane. But I was actually excited because Bane in the comics is an interesting character. If translated right on the big screen, it could be great. So we start off with that opening sequence. You know, Nolan likes to start off his movies with these big epic sequences, and this is no different. You have this airplane heist where Bane and his crew are kidnapping Dr. Pavel, who is a nuclear scientist. And that scene is really cool because a lot of it was actually done with real airplanes, not CGI airplanes. And so a lot of this stuff that you see on screen, it looks real because a lot of it is real and it feels very dangerous. The thought of blowing up a plane and kidnapping somebody from that plane and moving to a different plane. I just can't even imagine how they came up with putting together this stunt. And it's amazing to watch on screen, and we get to watch it in IMAX, which is also amazing. And just on a little side note, you know how they used IMAX in The Dark Knight? Well, this one has probably at least 50% IMAX scenes. So when you're watching this movie, it switches between IMAX scenes and then your regular 35mm scenes. And that's just another element of these movies that I love. It's just fun to watch IMAX scenes because they really stand out. But there was also a lot of confusion with that scene too. What was the point of this whole scene? And if you do your research, you find that Bane needed Dr. Pavel because he was the one guy that could turn the fusion reactor into a nuclear weapon. But let's talk about the character Bane for a minute. I love how Tom Hardy tackled this character. He gave him this really intellectual type of voice, which is the antithesis of what he looks like. And it does have some similarities to Sean Connery.
And you brought him down here.
We didn't know what to do. We just
You
thought
panicked. And your weakness has cost the lives of 3 others.
But it's cool because right away when you hear that voice, you think, okay, this is an intelligent criminal. He's not just muscles. He can actually think, and he puts together this crew, and he wants to really burn Gotham to ashes. And that is what brings Batman out of hiding. Batman has been in hiding for 8 years. If you remember, he took the fall for all that Harvey Dent did in The Dark Knight. And so he is seen really as a villain. But Commissioner Gordon gets in way too deep and he is severely hurt. And so he tells Batman, you need to come back. Gotham needs you again. We cannot beat this villain without your help. And let me just say that first scene when Batman comes back, which is like 45 minutes into the movie, is just so epic. It's the stock exchange heist when Bane takes some hostages, and really that was just a whole plan for Bane to help Daggett absorb Wayne Enterprises. But they take these hostages, and then they're on the streets of Gotham, and we see Batman come in for the first time to save the hostages. Again, that scene was so exhilarating. I got chill bumps just watching it. It was just so cool to see Batman come back. And I think they played it right. You didn't see Batman at the beginning of the film. They built up the plot, and then eventually when Batman does come back, it's exhilarating. Now, The Dark Knight Rises, it's such a big story. It can be a convoluted plot, and some people that don't like this movie or don't like it as much, that's probably the reason, because A, it's really long, and B, there are a lot of moving parts. To me, that's not a fault. I think after you watch repeat viewings of this movie, you do tend to appreciate it more. Especially the first time you watch it, you're just, you're happy that you're seeing a new Christopher Nolan Batman movie, so it's hard to take it all in. But I've watched this movie probably 10 times now, and every time I watch it, I get something more out of it. But I do like some of the new characters too. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who plays Blake, and he is much like Bruce Wayne. He was an orphan, and right at the beginning of the movie, he tells Bruce Wayne, hey, I pretty much know that you're Batman. I know that look. I'm an orphan myself. I know the type when I see it. And I think that's what makes his character so interesting. And he really is a pivotal character throughout this movie. I don't think Bruce Wayne could get accomplished what he wants to be accomplished without the help of Blake and without the help of Selina Kyle, played by Anne Hathaway. I love her take on Catwoman. It's very realistic, because if you think, what would Catwoman be like in a real world environment? And I think Christopher Nolan, he did the best he could with that character.
Got your tongue.
You dumb bitch.
Nobody ever accused me of being dumb.
And Anne Hathaway is awesome in this role. Not only in the way she looks, in the costume, but also in her acting. A great example is that first scene in the bar where she's making a deal to get the clean slate program. She wants a fresh start because she has a criminal background. But in that scene, she shifts from a person that is a damsel in distress to a person that is in complete control. And I think that's the power that women superheroes have over men. They can shift personalities to their advantage. And also, Catwoman's an interesting character because she rides that line. She's not necessarily the good guy, but she's not necessarily the bad guy. And this movie's no different. And Batman is constantly playing this tug of war with her because she's not necessarily always on his side. As a matter of fact, she leads him to Bane when Bane actually breaks Batman's back. And by the way, that scene is just so cool. It's all hand-to-hand combat, and what's really cool about it is there's really no music behind it. So you hear every punch, you hear every kick, and throughout that scene you see the power of Bane. And I think a minute in, you automatically know there's no way that Batman's gonna be able to beat this guy. Because not only is Bane an excellent fighter, but he's also highly intelligent. He was a member of the League of Shadows, and he was excommunicated by Ra's al Ghul himself. That's how crazy this guy is. And if you remember how the Joker wanted to play with Batman, not Bane, he wants to destroy him. It's sort of like in Rocky IV when Rocky has to go against Ivan Drago, and there's no way that he could beat Ivan Drago. But before I go, I have to talk about the end of this movie, which is completely awesome. Batman has to save the day, and again, he puts himself on the line for Gotham. And in Gotham's mind, Batman is dead. He kills himself for Gotham. He takes the nuclear weapon away and drops it in the ocean. And I think that scene is perfect because it just shows that Batman is not a person, he is a symbol. This symbol will do whatever it takes to save Gotham, including give his life. And I love how the story just wraps up and you see Blake going down into the Batcave. The movie ends with Blake possibly becoming Batman. What a great ending. I just have to say thank you, Christopher Nolan, for giving us, in my mind, one of the greatest trilogies of all time. So I'm sure it will come as no surprise that I am giving The Dark Knight Rises a Trapped on an Island. I think there's very few trilogies where all three movies are great, and The Dark Knight is one of those few. So anyway, guys, that is it. I want to thank Bryan Lomax. He is such a great friend. He really helped me out on this review. I always tell him, you are the class of these reviews. And I mean that. He is just a class act. And also, guys, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to join the Killer Flicks Facebook group where we not only talk horror, but we talk other movies as well. If you like my reviews, be sure to click that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. Also, guys, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And
Drumdum out.